Hello, good morning and welcome to Purple's webinar entitled Are You Being Reasonable? And I would like to welcome Purple guests who may be new guests to Purple from Disability Confident. As people will know, this is a government theme this month on workplace adjustments, and we're delighted that many of you can join us. And for people who have been on Purple webinars before, welcome back. As usual, what we will do is we have a live chat function. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the live chat, but I will, and we will ensure that there is an opportunity at the end for us to answer your questions. I'm delighted today to welcome Jill, who is our guest, and I will hand over to her to say who she is and who she works for.
Thanks, Mike. My name's Jill Hudson, and I work for a company called eInsist.
Jill, do you want to just say a little bit about what eInsist do?
Yes, certainly. eInsist is one of the UK's leading AT, and by that I mean assistive technology and disability services suppliers. We have been in business for 30 plus years. In fact, it's 35 this year. And what we do is we provide disability solutions for individuals, for companies, for students, for anybody who needs our help.
Are we being reasonable? That is the question that we're asking ourselves this morning, and that relates to workplace adjustments. And I'm just wondering, Jill, as a starting point, how do you define a workplace adjustment?
Workplace adjustments that are needed to be made in the workplace are about the individual. They're making sure that the individual has a fair playing field, the same as anybody else that they're working with. So any adjustments that need to be made are to make their life easier and to make them more productive as a team.
So I think what you're saying is this is about levelling the playing field. This is about organisations who have brought in quality members of staff to perform and to do their job. And in many ways, I think what you're saying is workplace adjustments is an investment in that individual and in that organisation to enable them to do precisely that.
Absolutely. That's, yes, exactly what I meant.
Good. Well, we're on the same page then. So what I think would be useful is, as a way of deconstructing workplace adjustments and for viewers to understand what we're talking about, whether you could take us through a couple of examples of successful workplace adjustments that you have undertaken recently.
Yes, of course. One individual that we worked with, the difficulties they were having were they worked on a very, very small screen. And we were just asked to go in to see if there was anything we could do to make life better. What we actually changed was we got a larger screen. In fact, we ended up with multiple screens so that the person could work with 2 screens. We also set up a very small basic bit of scripting. And by that, I mean a tool that would allow, when the person switched their computer on of a morning, it opened all the programs they had to have open. Some of the challenges they had were they would forget to open all of the right things in the right order. Therefore, they didn't work for them. So by doing something really simple that was actually working in the background, they became really productive really quickly. We believe in always going back and making sure the adjustments we've made are working, both for the individual, for the line manager. Once we went back, the line manager wanted to speak to us very quickly and said, actually, I've got a few more people who could do exactly the same thing. Can you do this again? Because it had been that successful for them. So that's one example of technology working. We have also used, it's not always about technology. It can often just be coaching somebody, really listening to what sort of difficulties they're having. They often do know the answer themselves. By just speaking to them and giving them the time to step back and actually look at the difficulty, we can then work through to a solution for them. It really works very well if the line manager will get involved at this stage.
Brilliant. You've raised two what I think are fundamental points from this morning. One is that workplace adjustments is not simply about kit. It's a focus on the individual employee and how they best can perform and do their job, which may be about kit, but maybe about other things and maybe about people. And I think the second thing you have said that is equally important, and from the research and evidence that we have seen, is that workplace adjustments work best when they involve, and people talk about the organisation, but actually I'm going to define that even narrower and involve the line manager of the disabled employee. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. If we can get the line manager, their line manager, the team that the individual works with, if all of these people can become involved, it makes a much happier workspace and a better understanding of difficulties that somebody may have every day. One of the things that we work with quite a lot are specific learning difficulties, which obviously is a hidden disability. It is very difficult for somebody to understand what a hidden disability is if they don't know. So we do spend a lot of time working with different teams to say, this is what it would be like to be this individual for a day. This is the challenge they have, not just for the 20 minutes that we're in here, but for every moment of their life.
And I think, funnily, so when Jill and I were talking this morning in relation to this webinar, you told a really powerful illustration example of an individual with dyslexia and the work that you did not only with that individual but with their peers and colleagues as well. Can you just kind of describe to the viewers today that example?
Yes, of course. It was an individual who was happy to talk about their dyslexia. Their line manager was very, very supportive. The team that she worked with really couldn't understand the difficulties she was having, couldn't understand why it took her longer to read emails, took her longer to work on something on her computer. She did get some software that was going to help her, so things that would read out for her. But we did dyslexia awareness training with the group. So the dyslexic individual is the only person who doesn't have to join in. Everybody is given something to read. And actually, it's just a couple of paragraphs that are backwards. And what came out of that was they suddenly realised that how difficult it was, one, to crack the code of what you're supposed to be doing, and two, once they'd cracked it, yes, they could read it, but they couldn't comprehend it at all, and they certainly couldn't answer 3 very simple questions that we asked afterwards. So it really put them into the individual shoes and gave them an idea and a flavour of what it would be like. All of them said how tired they were, and we obviously did take a wee break straight afterwards, but it was trying to get them to identify that this person has this every day. It doesn't stop when they leave work. It is something that happens to them all the time.
I think this is important because this is about context. This is not about empathy, but it's about enabling staff to understand some of the issues so they can work alongside their colleagues and understand what enables that colleague to perform. And I think that's what that kind of illustration indicated. And we come to an issue around workplace adjustments, and it would be good to just give us an example of 2 cases really. One where the individual has openly disclosed, and I'm predominantly talking, going back to your point here about hidden impairments, where the person has come in and go, look, I've got dyslexia, or I've got a mental health condition, and this is how it impacts on my performance, and here are the workplace adjustments I think I need in order to perform. Which is a different scenario, by the way, than one in which you come in once an individual has really struggled because they haven't felt able to disclose and are in danger, I suspect, of being under performance management or losing their job. And it would just be useful for you to describe those two different contexts and how they feel different in terms of the role that you do.
Of course. Yes, I'm going to talk about somebody who, it was a gentleman who struggled with mental health issues. He really didn't want to disclose this at all to anyone. We had been brought in, it, yes, sadly was at a performance management level. And our brief was, sadly, to get him back on track. We were brought in to do some coaching with him to find out what difficulties he had. Now, it took quite a long time for the trust to build up, and this was over numerous sessions. But eventually, he disclosed that it was mental health issues that he had, which actually, for him, was almost a relief that he had told somebody. He very much felt that people were going to judge him on it. And we spent time talking through the advantages as well as the disadvantages that he had, and the things that he was actually really good at, so that self-esteem was improving. It was about a 6-month journey that we worked with him, and eventually he felt that he could disclose to his line manager and also to the team that he worked with, which actually turned the whole situation around because people were very understanding, very supportive, and all of the situations that he'd envisaged, which were actually just feeding his anxiety and making him much, much worse, just didn't happen. The people were very understanding. There was no stigma. So that was a person who wouldn't disclose. I've also worked with somebody, again, and this was actually a lady who had dyslexia, who sort of had disclosed but hadn't quite really sort of thought everybody understood what it was and what she was doing. She worked in numerous different sites, so it was quite difficult to actually, she wasn't always with her line manager, so she didn't always have that support. She asked us to meet with her line manager, with her, so that we could talk through the difficulty she was having and why on this case, actually, some software was going to help. And we managed then to get IT involved so that the software she had, she didn't have to refresh it and spend half a day in a different site making it work. And actually became a very positive experience for her. Once she'd actually sat down and said, actually, you do really need to know, I have a diagnosis of.
It's fascinating because this, although it's about workplace adjustments, this is also about disclosure, which is a big issue for both disabled employees, potential employees, and the organisations. And we know that 80% of disabled people in the UK have hidden impairments. We know that 83% of disabled people acquire their impairment in life. We know that 33% of individuals will experience some mental health during their working life. And we know of that 33%, only 14% feel that they are able to talk to their line manager about it. So there's a huge number of disconnects here. And it seems to me that workplace adjustments is the intervention that can enable those things to come together and ultimately for the individual to perform. And you've talked in the last 5-10 minutes about the importance of line managers in this process. And just interested in your experience of working with line managers to support line managers to support individuals with disabilities.
I think it's really important. Us as an organisation obviously will go in and be as supportive as we can. However, we are only going to be there for a certain period of time, and that could be 2 hours once a month, if that is actually what is needed. Most people will need some support all of the time. And a line manager is absolutely ideal for this. However, they probably will need some more understanding about what the person's difficulties are, why they have those difficulties, how these difficulties can present themselves, and how they, if they're not addressed, how they can actually feed the challenges that they have and actually make anxiety and stress much worse. What we're trying to do is obviously make them as productive as they can, but also as happy as they can in their workplace, because actually happy individuals work so much better. So a lot of what we do is promoting understanding of challenges and difficulties, but also the positives of anybody's difficulties, because there's always a positive as well.
Okay, that's really interesting. Let me deal with. I thought there was one elephant in the room, but I think there's two. So let me deal with it. One is, this is all very good. This is all very positive, but comes at a price. So can you just tell me how workplace adjustments, from your experience, is normally funded?
Of course, it can be funded one of two ways. A company can pay for it. So just in any size of company can pay for services that would include adjustments, equipment, coaching, etc. Or there is a scheme called Access to Work. And this is a scheme run by the government for reasonable adjustments. Access to Work works wonderfully with the very small or the small to medium companies, but it also funds self-employed people. So it's one of the adjustments that people can use to get some government funding to actually provide both bits of kit, bits of things, and some services.
Access to Work, for people who are listening, has once been called the government's best kept secret, because no one seems to know it exists. But like Jill says, what it does, it pays for the reasonable additional costs associated with enabling an individual to work in an organisation. And it's incredibly important, it's incredibly effective. What you need to know is that the money flows with the individual. So it doesn't go to the organisation, but it goes with the individual. And outside of here, Purple on our website have a whole range of information sheets and guides to help you and your disabled employees navigate your way through Access to Work. And if you haven't yet, if you don't know about Access to Work, I would suggest that you look at those guidance sheets outside of here. But I think the other point that Jill was making was, don't necessarily see workplace adjustments as a cost, but actually you have invested in employees who may or may not have a disability, and workplace adjustments could be seen as an investment in making sure that your potential that you've employed is maximised. And I think I saw something the other week that says the average Access to Work grant is about £191, and people immediately think of lifts and ramps, but actually, and Jill has kind of talked about it, a lot of it is about software. Some of it's a bit about coaching, it might be just an hour, that makes that huge difference in unlocking that potential. So if you're watching today, see workplace adjustments as an investment. And I just wanted to touch on something, Jill, because it's incredibly important that workplace adjustments and the work that you do, you alluded to it, but I just want to just kind of reinforce this, is for small businesses as well as the big, large corporates. Absolutely.
Yes, we work with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses. We do work occasionally with just an individual who comes to us knowing that they need some support, but primarily small to medium, and then we work with some very large organisations as well. So all of this is available to everyone, I think, is the message I'd like to get across.
Brilliant. And it is Tuesday morning, and it is the day I am able to make sweeping statements, so I will. I would argue that in some ways it is more critical and vital for small businesses to positively affect workplace adjustments, because by definition you have fewer staff in your organisation and you need all those staff to be performing at their maximum. So workplace adjustments is about performance as well. And I just wonder, Jill, from your experience and in terms of summarising everything that you've kind of said, what would you suggest are the key ingredients for making workplace adjustments successful?
I think the biggest is possibly the openness of the organisation, the small to medium-sized company, that everybody is open about any disclosure they need to make. Then there could be a good understanding of why somebody may have difficulties, but also you can also tap into some of their strengths that may not be associated or may not have been realised in the past because this person has this job. Actually, the challenges they have may actually give them an advantage over others. And also, I think the impact the whole thing has on that individual, and it is bringing it back to the person again. I think I said earlier, this is one of those things that, yes, we work with the workplace. However, these things don't stop when you leave the door. Therefore, it can actually make a huge impact on someone's life.
Thank you. I can see down here, I'm just conscious of time, but I can see a couple of questions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a couple of questions, Jill. I can see that people have said, I insist sound really useful. How do I get in touch with them? So this is your opportunity to do your sales pitch.
Hey, let's go for it. The easiest way to get in touch with us, we have two websites. We have iansist.co.uk, and Iansist is IANSYST.co.uk, or dyslexic.com. Both of those have our contact details on. We have two offices. We have one in Cambridge and one in Edinburgh, and phone numbers and emails are both on the websites.
Thank you. And the other question is, well, it's part question, part observation. Someone has said that they came on today thinking this was all about the disabled employee and how they could support them. And they're starting to think that actually workplace adjustments is equally about the organisation and the line manager. Can you just kind of reiterate, I think, that for people who go away today thinking, oh, there might be a training need here, or we could bring you in to do some training with line managers, that's the kind of service that you provide?
Yeah, absolutely, the kind of service we provide. The things we would do if somebody wanted to approach us to talk about anything of any type of disability, we can make sure that we tailor the course to actually be about that individual's difficulties. We do obviously do a very, very broad disability awareness, but we do then break them down into things like mental health awareness, dyslexia awareness, autism awareness, etc. I could go on, but we would tailor it to either the individual or the company's needs.
Brilliant. And just finally, if you were to be giving two top tips, the takeaways, the thing that viewers need to walk away from this webinar with in terms of making workplace adjustments a positive experience for all, what would they be?
They need to be fair, they aren't always huge. It can be the simplest thing that can make the adjustment. And I would also not expect miracles overnight. You may need to work with somebody over a period of time to get the best out of them, but it is so worth investing in them.
Thank you, Jill. It is incredibly insightful, your comments today, and we are delighted that you've been able to join us for this webinar and, as I said, give us your insight. For some of you, you will know us well, but for others, this may be the first time you have worked with Purple. So on the screen now is how you can get in touch with Purple and the kind of products and services that we provide, both in terms of workplace adjustments, but our broader work with employers who are going on their disability confident journey, which you all are. And I would like to point you in the direction of Purple's recently launched offer to business membership pack, which enables you to have brand alignment with Purple, but the benefits include undertaking a digital diagnosis, which is how accessible is your website and the things that we can do to support that. If you are on your disability confident journey and need some support in going through level 1, level 2 and level 3, we can provide bespoke support to you to accelerate that journey and deepen your understanding to build both capacity and capability in your organisation. We offer, as part of our membership offer, job board to be able to identify really good quality disabled candidates that kind of can make that they can close that loop in terms of your commitment, in terms of bringing talented individuals into the organisation. And we offer consultancy as well. So if you haven't seen it, I would suggest that you come to our website, which is wearepurple.org.uk, and just have an explore. I know people are incredibly busy, so I wanted to thank you all for participating on the webinar today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.